guys, Danny here. We are chatting about emotional eating in today's nap time chat. So, if that is something that you have struggled with, are struggling with, know someone who's struggling with, then yeah, let's chat about it. Tag anyone that you know who needs to see this video in the comments. And if you're watching live, comment along as we go. I can answer any questions you have as I go. And if you're watching the replay, comment as if you're watching live, and I will pop back in the comments later on and we can continue the conversation there. So emotional eating is something that I talk a fair bit about, and if you know anything about me and my journey, you know that I've been through the emotional eating struggle myself, and that's such a big part of why I'm passionate about talking about it now and helping other people, especially women, come out the other side of that. Emotional eating can feel like such a kind of dark hole that you get into, and it can feel like there's no way out. It can feel like at times that you're to blame, or you're failing, or there's something wrong with you because you can't get out of that habit or cycle of emotional eating. And I am here telling you that it's not your fault. You can get out of the cycle of emotional eating. And yeah, we're going to chat today about why we emotionally eat and how we can break that cycle. And it's, again, similar to yesterday with the sugar cravings, it's not about willpower. So let me start with that. Emotional eating is an emotional issue, right? So often when it comes to our health and our eating habits, we'll try to think our way out of it. And this is using our logical, conscious thinking brain. When it comes to emotional eating, we so often try and think our way out of it. And I just want to remind you that emotional eating is emotional, right? So we need to actually address the emotions that are going on, not just think about how we're going to stop doing it or use willpower, which is like a thinking, conscious thing, to try and break the cycle. We actually have to deal with the emotions that are there so that we can overcome emotional eating long term, change the habit long term. So that's the first thing, is that we really can't ignore the emotions when it comes to emotional eating. So where does it start? Emotional eating usually starts from a youngish age. It can start from like watching other people in your life as you grow up emotionally eat and soothe themselves with food. So you might have seen your parents or your grandparents or any significant adult that was in your life turn to food when things felt hard or tricky or yucky, and you can learn that through observation. Another really big place that emotional eating starts in our childhood is things that we've probably all heard and all experienced, and they're as simple as getting a lollipop from the doctor when you get your needles, or getting an ice cream because you fell over and scraped your knee and you're upset. Any time that an adult soothes you or calms you down or rewards you with food as a child, you start to form this belief that food equals comfort, food equals soothing my emotions, that kind of thing. So all of those seemingly insignificant incidents and experiences can kind of form this belief that then affects you as an adult and means that you turn to food when you're feeling upset, sad, emotional, whatever the emotion is. So it really can be formed from such a young age, this idea that food equals comfort and reward and soothing and calming. And if we don't have any other coping mechanisms for stress, for our emotions, for the way that we feel, then emotional eating can become a really big issue because it's the only way we know how to deal with our emotions. And as we grow up into adults, it's really important that we learn other ways to cope with our emotions and actually process and feel and express those emotions rather than just pushing them down and suppressing them, because that's what emotional eating is doing. It's basically, if you think of the way that you express yourself, right, it's this up and out movement of like talking and crying and laughing and whatever it is. So when we have any kind of emotions, the emotions need to come up and out to be expressed, to be processed, to be healed. And once we process and feel and allow those emotions to be there, we can actually move on from them. But what happens so often is we're afraid of our emotions. We're told that emotions are bad. We're told to stop crying, don't be silly, all those kind of things. So we don't know how to feel our emotions. We don't know how to allow them or process them or just express them. And so we just shove them back down. So if expressing is coming up and out, then food is going down, right? So it's literally pushing those emotions down. And that is why we need to deal with the emotions, because you can't think your way out of that. You can't use willpower to change the way that you process and heal and feel and express your emotions. You actually have to deal with the emotions themselves. So when I'm working with a client who wants to overcome emotional eating, it's really a two-part approach. And the first is looking at their childhood, looking at their subconscious, and this is where the kinesiology comes in, to deal with what's in the subconscious mind. What is your programming? What is your beliefs, your default setting that tells you that food equals comfort or food equals soothing, calming, whatever you're using it for. So we look at that to know where it's come from, and so that we can kind of peel back that top layer of like, where has this come from? Why do we have this coping mechanism? And then once we've like realized and recognized that, we can move on to, okay, how can we actually be comfortable with our emotions, and how can you allow yourself to feel your emotions, to be emotional without trying to shut that down with food, without trying to ignore them, suppress them, pretend that they're not there. So it's about recognizing where it's come from, and then the longer term practice of that that takes some getting used to is actually allowing yourself to have an emotion and to feel that emotion without it being too scary or confronting, and feel, process, heal, express whatever needs to happen with that emotion so that you can move on from it, rather than this kind of pushing down with food, suppressing, ignoring, soothing yourself, that kind of thing with food. So that's how we deal with emotional eating, is looking at the emotions. We can't think our way out of it. It's as simple as that. I wish that we could, because it seems easier, but we just can't. We have to deal with the emotions that are going on. And there are many practices that I take my clients through to help them feel okay with having emotions, feel okay with expressing their emotions safely, comfortably, in really healthy ways. And there's lots of kind of tools that we can use so that when we do have that urge to emotionally eat and turn to food to suppress our emotions, that we have these other tools. These are things that I've used myself, and then things that I've been trained in throughout my training as a naturopath and kinesiologist. Tools that we can then rely on to go, okay, I'm having the urge to turn to food for my emotions, to suppress them. What can I do instead to actually feel those emotions? And when you're someone that hasn't been allowed to feel or express your emotions, possibly for your whole life, at least for a very long time, it can feel really confronting to do that. But it's like, the analogy that I use so often is, it's kind of like you're in a riptide. So imagine that you're in the ocean and your emotions are the riptide. And most of us know, if you're in the ocean and you get caught in a rip, the only thing that you can do for your safety is just allow it to take you. So you basically just float, allow it to take you where you need it wants to take you, and eventually you will come out of the rip and you'll be fine. So emotions are like that, in that we just need to feel them, and when we just allow ourselves to feel them and express them and process them, then they don't feel as scary, and we come out the other side and it's calm waters again, everything's fine. But what happens is, if you're in that rip and you're swimming against it, you're going to get really tired. You're not going to be able to swim against it, because the force of that is huge, and you're going to probably end up in a worse situation than if you were to just allow it. And the same as with emotions. If you fight against them, if you tell yourself you shouldn't have them, if you suppress them, if you try and ignore them and pretend they're not there, then they will just feel stronger and stronger, and you'll be exhausted, and you just can't keep that up. And so often I see it in my clients, and I see it in my personal life as well, So often when we suppress our emotions for too long and ignore them and that kind of thing, they then come out like a volcano because we can't hold on to them forever. And that is when we start to really impact the people around us. I'm going off track a bit here, but basically, if you're not feeling and healing and processing and allowing your emotions, then they will come out in really unhealthy ways. And if you are suppressing and ignoring them, then you might be using food to do that. There are other ways that we numb as well. Alcohol is another big one. Drugs, of course. Shopping, like there's so many ways that we numb and suppress our emotions. But when we keep doing that and keep pushing them down, they usually just explode out of us. And that's when they really are, can be harmful to the people around us as well as ourselves. So it feels weird and it feels scary to allow yourself to feel your emotions. Hi, Sally. But it really is the only way to go when it comes to emotional eating, is actually dealing with the emotions behind it, and learning new ways of feeling and allowing those emotions, without being afraid of them, without labeling or judging them as good or bad, just allowing them to be there and being compassionate to yourself throughout that. And when you're able to do that, you will then not feel the need to turn to food when you feel emotional. So as with anything, it's, you've been doing the emotional eating for how many years. It is a step-by-step process to come out of that cycle. But I can tell you that I used to be probably one of the worst emotional eaters I know. And I'm not anymore. I can eat the same foods that I used to turn to when I was emotional, but I actually enjoy them now, instead of it being this emotional urge and this kind of binge eating session to push all my emotions down. And it's become a really simple process for me now. If I'm feeling emotional, just allowing myself to feel and be with that emotion, and it usually passes way faster that way. Because I haven't fought against it and made it stronger, like that riptide analogy. So, I hope that helps if you're struggling with emotional eating. I do have a program coming out on this. I have 3 programs coming out. So, emotional eating, food cravings, and body image. They will all be coming out probably the end of this month, let's say. So if it's something that you want to dive deeper in, then just kind of keep in touch on socials and I'll let you know when they're ready. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or comments about emotional eating, anything that you'd like to know more on, or anything you're struggling with, then drop me a comment or send me a message. And that's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm not sure what I'm talking about yet, so if you have any topic ideas for naptime chats, then let me know. Otherwise, I will just choose one randomly based on how I'm feeling tomorrow. All right, have a great day, guys. Bye.